As we delve into the latest on today's voting process, we have here with us our guest, Dr. Al-Ghabra. She's the Associate Professor of Communication and Cultural Studies. Good afternoon, Dr. Haneen. How are you today?
Thank you for having me.
It's we're very glad to be able to have you here to talk to us. I'd like to ask you, beginning with the candidates running for the National Assembly elections 2022, who began, they began on the 29th of August, submitting their papers to the Interior Ministry, Elections Affairs Department until September 7th. With the female candidates reaching 22 women so far for the National Assembly elections, how do you view such a figure representing the return of women and their contribution to the political arena?
I think it's great because women are demanding political participation, and we're in need of emancipation, not just in Kuwait but worldwide in general. And so there's a lack that we need, if that makes sense. But basically, women are trying to get into parliament. They're trying to occupy leadership roles, and I feel like the women that are running, I respect them so much for a very good reason, is that these women are running in a one-vote electoral system, which means that the chances of them winning are very slim. And so I respect them for, even if they don't enter the parliament, because I only see maybe one max if we get any into parliament, women getting in. But I feel like if the fact that they're running is they're making a statement as well, right? So it's not just only about getting into parliament, but it's also about making a statement, because it's very hard for us to get in with the one vote system. And so I really think that this is a courageous move.
All right, with the political rights of women witnessed the long march spanning over time, there have been repeated demands for women's participation in the political life, accompanied in the beginning of the constitutional era. Can you just shed some light with regards to the history of the political contributions of women?
So women historically have been contributing to the country in general. So even like in the 50s, there was a protest where a bunch of women came out and burned their abayas. In the 60s, you had an association developed. I think it was called the Family or Women's Family Association. But then you had the Women's Cultural Society. After that, we had Nadi al-Fatat. So you had, which is a national sports association, and so you have all these associations that helped with, starting or fighting for the emancipation of women. And then in the 90s, which is really overlooked, especially in the Gulf War, women had a key role in fighting the Iraqi occupation, which I think is not really highlighted as much. And so throughout, the women that were in parliament, women that have occupied leadership positions, whether it's ministry or whether it's anywhere. And so you're even seeing more women. I mean, I was surprised today when I walked into the studio and I found a whole camera crew of women, and it actually brought joy, And so all these different positions, women are starting to fill in. But the problem is we also don't want to be tokenized. So having that one woman in between 10 men, and so we need it to be more of a 50-50 equal participation. But women have historically, worldwide, been fighting for their political rights.
Right. If you talk about women, I mean, women have traditionally in Kuwait been able to teach, to be able to do more. So that is, we're going back before independence. So women have been a cornerstone of our society, and we've just evolved from there, and we are able to achieve more.
That's important, because I think if you're evolving, you need to evolve with more participation. So I think that's a very important point. And so, well, with 22 women we've got running, how do you think it could go? Do you think women would primarily vote for women, or do we have a larger group of men who think the women are able to do a great job and will? That's an important question, and I think we're not there yet, because the problem is we're in a patriarchal society, right? And that's worldwide. It manifests differently from country to country, depending on where you are. But so if we have this thinking that men are better than women, right? And it doesn't mean that all men or all women think like that. But you have a lot of women, we're talking about women now, because we already know that there are a lot of men that might think like that, but a lot of women that are they're embodying and internalizing this patriarchy. So they're not thinking, I'm going to go vote for a woman, or I need to form alliances. So the problem is, for the core fundamental issue is we don't have alliances. So women are not you know, men actually have this that we don't have. There's no alliances between us. And so if we can't form alliances, how are we going to get into these positions? How are we even going to form allyship with men? So first it begins with women forming alliances within themselves, right?
Okay.
Because we're all fragmented right now. And a lot of women aren't, you know, you see that a lot, like especially with the older, like I think with the newer generation, it's much more better. But you see that especially with like the mothers sometimes, like they're internalizing this patriarchy. You know, my son is better than my daughter. Like these narratives are a reflection of a huge societal problem that is gonna hinder women from becoming or getting into any political position or having any leadership role.
What I would like to ask is. During the several stages, women have faced several stages where they've met determination with a very clear path of equality. And those efforts were crowned with success on the 16th of May 2005 when the National Assembly passed a law enabling women to participate in the political candidacy and election. Can you delve into the advantages of women seizing this right, and how does it reflect in the country's 2035 vision?
I remember this was a victorious day. I mean, I still remember the day so clearly because women were protesting from years before that, especially in 2004. And in 2005, and you know, even the Emir of Kuwait in 1999, he was very supportive of this.
Yes.
So here we have our, you know, right to vote in 2005. And then now we have the vision, right? And Kuwait's vision is very similar to the UN. There's some similarities with the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay.
So the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they want clean energy, clean water, environmental concerns, gender concerns, inequality. That's two where you know, racism and sexism basically, right? So gender and race, but. And Kuwait's development goal is to be a financial hub and to attract investors. Correct. So you're looking at a democracy. A democracy is never fixated. So a democracy can never evolve, ever, if it's hindering half of its citizens. So if we have women participating equally, then our democracy will actually grow. Because a democracy is a combination of the political system, you know, the education system, the laws, the legal, the media.
Yes.
Everything comes together, religion, culture, traditions. So if we're not evolving, so what happens is we have this democracy, but we're not evolving.
Okay.
So it's almost like a partially functioning democracy. So if we don't have women with, you know, being participating equally, we're not going to be able to be that, to even fulfill the 2035 vision.
All right. Before we continue with our guest, Dr. Haneen, let's take a look at the role of women in Kuwaiti society, which is vital in order to develop societal, economic and political aspects of the country. Over the years, women have held many leadership positions, with the most recent being the appointment of 8 female judges for the first time in the country's history. More in the following report.
The female presence and women participation in the country's achievements has gone from the individual level into a new era of global recognition, with working in charitable organizations and other international associations. The support of the state of Kuwait's leadership to women's rights was shown on May 16, 2005, when women obtained their political rights to be nominated and elected and to assume many leadership positions. The most recent of which was in June of 2020 by appointing 8 women as judges for the first time in the history of Kuwait. On May 16, 2005, the National Assembly approved granting women the right to nominate and vote, with a majority represented in the support of 35 members, opening the door for women to run for candidacy and vote. In 2006's National Assembly elections, although no female candidate won, their participation for the first time was considered a victory by all standards. On June 29, 2006, the percentage of women's participation in the elections was about 35%, which was excellent considering it was the first experience of women's participation in the elections, with 5 female candidates going on to win the title of the first female candidate to participate in Kuwait's parliamentary elections in the history of the country. In 2008's parliamentary elections, the long struggle of Kuwaiti women for parliamentary representation came to fruition when 27 of the 275 candidates were women, while in the parliamentary elections of May 2009, the presence of Kuwaiti women in the National Assembly culminated with remarkable success when 16 female candidates contested for 50 seats for a 4-year term, with 4 female candidates winning their seats and becoming Kuwait's first female lawmakers. Their electoral success led to a new era in Kuwait's political history in which women can finally be active participants and decision makers.
National Assembly Elections 2022, a constitutional entitlement and a national duty for preserving democratic gains and correcting the course. The people are the ones who choose. They are the ones who redraw the political scene. A national phase in which everyone unites for the sake of the homeland. National Assembly Elections 2022, correcting the course.
Well, going back to Dr. Haneen, our guest in the studio today. Dr. Haneen, I'd like to ask you, during this year's elections, there's a record number of women running to secure a place in the National Assembly. Now, can you tell us about the significant role of women in the elections and how important it is to have women representatives during this National Assembly?
I think it's very important because, first of all, women are more likely to tackle women's issues. Whether it's violence or abuse or education or childcare or whatever it is. But I think another important point is that women need to vote for women. Okay. And everyone needs, I mean, we need to vote for more women, but I think there's a significant role because if you look at research, and this is, you know, like solid research from the UN, from other research institutes, women are more likely when they're in parliament, they're more likely to focus on peace development, peace initiatives, on development, economic development, women's issues. So you have like a plethora of issues that women are good at. So they add to the table.
They bring more pluses to the table.
Yes.
Yeah. Since we spoke of women's role as representatives and shed some history on her journey in the political life, how about the importance of today's female voters? Would you advise this important segment of Kuwait's society to do for during today's democratic manifestation, hence the National Assembly?
Yeah, so it goes back to the question you asked me earlier, is how do we get women to form allyship, right? And so we answered that, but so then it becomes, you know, like women need to vote. And whether they're voting for men or for women, but we need to get more women on the table. And so I think it's really significant. And I think this question is important because they need to go out, first of all, they need to go out and vote. Second, we need to bring in good female candidates, right? Because let's also be honest that not all female candidates, like all male candidates, are not going to be as effective once they get into parliament. So what kind of women do we need to get into the parliament that are women that have the country at, you know, at their in the center fold, right?
Correct. Yeah.
The economy, development, human rights issues, all these different avenues, education, etc. So I think we need to look at it as a whole picture too.
All right. Just before we carry on with the updates, let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
National Assembly Elections 2022, a constitutional entitlement and a national duty for preserving democratic gains and correcting the course. The people are the ones who choose. They are the ones who redraw the political scene. A national phase in which everyone unites for the sake of the homeland. National Assembly Elections 2022, correcting the course.
And we're back with our guest, Dr. Haneen Al-Ghabra. Dr. Haneen, can you tell us your view about the flow of female voters through the years in comparison to this year in particular?
Well, I think the flow has increased significantly, and I think that's a really, really good thing. Because women are finally realizing that they have rights, right?
Okay.
And I think a lot of women, and we saw this in these political campaigns, that some women were frustrated from even older parliamentary members that their needs were not met. So women are frustrated, and so they're going out to vote. So A, it's frustration. B, they want their needs met. It's emancipation at the end of the day. And so I think that's a good thing, right? Because women are also occupying more managerial work roles, leadership roles, and so they want more, right? They just want a seat at the table, just want to be included.
Okay, just to address some of the issues. Can you tell us in detail the capabilities of the National Assembly among other bodies in Kuwait in terms of empowering women in Kuwait?
I think it really depends who you have in the National Assembly. I think there have been times where we feel disempowered by the NA, and there's times where women have felt empowered. And I think it goes back to like, who do we have in Parliament, right? And who has women's issues at stake.
Okay. Well, before we continue more with our interview, if you'd excuse, we'd like to go to my colleague Abdurrahim for the next report. Abdurrahim.
Thank you, Lulwa. The Kuwait leadership has always been keen on the issue of empowering women in society, and it was evident in the historic decision in 2005 that granted women the right to vote and stand for election. One of the pillars of Kuwait Vision 2035 is the empowerment of women, and it will be an important aspect in further developing the important role of women in society. Here's more.
Kuwait granted women their full political rights to vote, nominate, and assume leadership positions in order to establish their constitutional and political rights. Women in Kuwait have proven through a history full of achievement their leading and active role in the development process in the country, in various fields of public affairs, society, the economy, and politics. Despite early setbacks and difficulties, the success of Kuwaiti women earned them leadership roles and precedence at the Gulf level. Women in Kuwait occupied many leadership positions, becoming ministers and deputy ministers, university directors, ambassadors, and elected members of the National Assembly. The Kuwaiti leadership's first steps towards enabling women to occupy their rightful place on the country's work and development map began when the Council of Ministers announced in June 2005 the selection of engineer Fatima Saoud al-Sabah and engineer Fawziyya Muhammad al-Bahr for membership on the Municipal Council. Kuwaiti women have long been recognized as pioneers with a powerful voice in social, political, intellectual, and cultural arenas throughout the country's history. Due to the success in appointing female judges for the first time in Kuwait's history, more women are now pursuing careers as public prosecutors, and more lawyers are emerging from their ranks. The full economic empowerment of women has played a major role in the economic growth that continues to be witnessed in the country. On October 1, 2018, the General Secretariat of the Supreme Council for Planning and Development, the Women's Research and Studies Center at Kuwait University, the United Nations Development Program, UN Women, came together to launch the first of its kind global initiative in the GCC, the Women's Empowerment Principles, or the WEP. The WEPs are an integrated framework developed by UN Women and the UN Global Compact in 2010, and offers 7 steps to guide businesses on how to promote gender equality and empower women in the workplace, marketplace, and community. To this day, Kuwaiti women continue to leave their positive mark on the development of the country, and through their will and determination in various fields, they continue to prove their vital role in society.
بسم الله العلي القدير يفتتح الآن أعمال المجلس التأسيسي لدولة الكويت المستقلة.
إننا نعيش الآن في بلادنا نهضة شاملة لم يسبق لها مثيل.
إنني من على هذا المنبر أوجه بالنيابة عنكم تحية وتقدير واحترام لأهلنا في الكويت
حتى نواصل العمل الذي لا يتوقف لخدمة الكويت العزيزة.
لقد تأكدت بأنني من يحمي الدستور ولن أسمح بالمساس به.
مخلصين للعمل الجاد لخير ورفعة الكويت وأهلها الأوفياء.
اختيار القوي الأمين الذي يضع مصلحة الكويت وشعبها فوق كل اعتبار.
And we are back with our guest here in the studio, Dr. Al-Ghabra. As we saw here in Kuwait, the leadership has been always empowered women and continues to empower them and look at it as a priority. And as the Kuwait Vision 2035, women will be pushed further towards achievements and developments. And in its role in society keeps getting greater and greater in this sense. Can you tell us how women in Kuwait paved the way for the future generation with the blessing of the leadership to innovate and become a vital pillar of Kuwait's future?
Well, you can see that ever through time, you know, from our great grandmothers down to our mothers and aunts and etc. But I think, you know, women have systematically increased their leadership roles and their political participation. And yes, they have been supported. And I think that what's really important is that women are finally occupying more positions. Sure. And so we see that, and we see that happening, especially recently. You know, with the 8 judges and more women ministers and more parliament members, we're hopeful that we're going to have even more. And so I think this is the positive aspect of it.
Well, you've been a great addition to this update, Doctor, and we've really enjoyed interviewing you and having a chat with you about everything that's been going on. We'd like to thank you for being here, Dr. Haneen Al-Ghabra. Is there anything you'd like to say before?
No, thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure having you and talking to you about things.
Yes, you too.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, that was Dr. Haneen Al-Ghabra, so thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Before we take a break, let's take a look at a survey concerning our discussion.
National Assembly Elections 2022, a constitutional